Welcome to Tech Driven Business, brought to you by Innovative Solution Partners. I'm honored to welcome our dear friend and colleague, Bill Newman of SAP. Bill and I dive into the most integral part of any business, its workforce. He will highlight challenges being faced by organizations of all sizes and actions you can take today to ensure that you're ready for the next generation of workforce in your business. Hello, joining me today is Bill Newman, who serves as the Industry Executive Advisor Chief for the Automotive Customer Innovation Office at SAP North America. Welcome to Tech Driven Business, Bill.
Hey, thanks, Mustan, sir. Nice to be with you. Thanks again for having me.
It's awesome to have you on my show. So, Bill, please share a little bit about yourself with our listeners, so at least they have some kind of background about who you are, what have you been doing.
Yeah, happy to. So, Bill Newman, 35 years in manufacturing, planes, trains, automobiles. Most people may not know that I actually started off as an airplane guy, working on the B-2 stealth bomber. Back in the day when it was a top secret program and we couldn't speak on what we made, we had to say we made a paycheck every week and kindly change topic or run away. I've been in Detroit now for about 25 years, raised a wonderful family here, been with SAP, been a customer, was with Volkswagen, been a customer, a partner at several different large system integrators, including KPMG and Booz Allen. Been part of SAP's organization now for going into my 8th year. Have had the pleasure of working together with you, Mustan, here at our ASUG user group meeting. So it's really great to kind of have this homecoming time with you today.
For this first part, I'd like to zoom into this topic around the next generation of workforce. How does that sound to you?
No, that sounds great. It's definitely a very vibrant topic.
Absolutely. So let me start with this. As we are treading through 2021, what changes are you seeing in the workforce? And I'd like to zoom into the question more, especially from an experience, mentors and leaders, they have been leaving the workforce. And what kind of effect do you see on the overall from that perspective? Can you please dive into that?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot to cover there. So if we go back into the Wayback Machine, even before COVID times, we were seeing some pretty significant talent pull into lots of different industries. Basically all of the more, I guess, interesting industries like high tech and number of the startups. So the talent pool was getting pulled in lots of different directions. You can sit back and you can think about the 5 generations in the workforce, right? So you got the baby boomers, you got the baby busters, also known as Gen X, you got Gen Y, you got the millennials, and now the Gen Zers. And even before COVID, we were dealing with, pockets of expertise that were needed where, like, for example, in tooling in the automotive industry, back in 2018, the Center of Automotive Research did basically shot up a flare and said, we have a problem here because the average age of the tool and die maker is above 55. Well, that's pretty telling, and even though we're moving to advanced manufacturing techniques, it was just a thing, didn't want to go into dad's business or didn't want to follow in this, kind of more traditional way of making things. So different companies had to do things like deep mentorship programs, kind of the, for people who were on kind of that executive or high potential curve, take a 6 to 12 month shift to learn these techniques so that the body of knowledge was still, kept within the organization. Well, now that we've gone into COVID, a lot of the top level of our workforce, many of whom were kind of hanging around for 1 or 2 more years, they've just decided that this is enough. There's maybe too much technology for them to deal with. I mean, we're hosting this show and we're using a technology platform. And, listeners might not know that we can actually see each other, but for people who are, very senior in their work experience, this is a whole new deal for them. So that was a big culture shift for them. Many of them had illness issues themselves, or illness with their families. And they just said, enough's enough. I've got enough money to retire and I'm just going to punch out. So we've seen quite a significant drain of talent in the top, kind of that top two over 50 and 55 and older bracket of workers, particularly in tech and manufacturing. And that's really crucial to train, coach, mentor, all of the folks that are particularly in the millennial workforce that are now holding positions of authority and leadership in a number of different industries and many different companies, big and small, right? From corporate to family-held businesses.
Absolutely. And I think what I'm hearing from you is with COVID, the whole process has accelerated at a much higher pace than before that. So it seems like there's less time available and less talent available at the same time. So how do you manage that gap? That seems to be a big challenge for the workforce, especially for the next generations. So I mean that kind of takes me into my next conversation. Especially when you are dealing with organizations where you have big management teams, and from their perspective, and even if you take it down a notch and look at small or medium-sized businesses, from an owner's perspective or from a management perspective, what kind of impact does this shift has, and what do you think they will need to do to kind of counter that?
Well, it's a really interesting question. So I was on a podcast not too long ago, and we were saying, now is a really good time for family-held businesses to have, those parents to have conversations with their adult children to figure out, whether or not they would be interested to take on the next generation of the business, because there's just so many challenges right now, from supply to labor, all the things that everybody reads about that we're also covering here. I also think that, frankly, there's just a lot of people that are either promoted into leadership positions, ownership positions for privately held companies, who just aren't interested in doing that. I've recently learned of a high-tech learning company whose owners just decided that they're going to throw in the towel. And much like some of the manufacturing suppliers we see, they're great companies, but they either run out of capital or they run out of leadership and just need that infusion of either cash equity or new thinking, fresh blood to take them to the next step. And with this kind of cliff fall off of talent leaving the workforce that we've seen, like you say, accelerated over the last 1 or 2 years, makes it a really critical time, not just for small to medium companies and family-held businesses, but also for large corporations as well.
Absolutely. I think that this seems like this trend doesn't seem to leave a certain mark on small, medium, or any size business. It's just cutting across industries, cutting across, geographical locations for that matter. So it seems like a much bigger issue than initially people were kind of narrowing it down to a certain industry and saying maybe they have an issue in that particular workspace. But seems like the way you are talking through this conversation, I mean, all kind of folks are having these same questions on how to manage that next generation, basically, and how to keep that continuity of business, especially in this time where things are getting back to normal, as we all know, what that new normal looks like, and how do you make it going forward, especially when you're running a business and you want to make it, as profitable as it could be and as viable as it could be. So let me ask you this, from the podcast perspective, one of the things that we like to focus in is connecting the dots between people, operations, and technology. So What you have seen based on your experience, what advice would you have for those faced with these challenges in their business?
Well, I think probably taking the time to understand your employees, what their career aspirations are. Many millennials have an average of only 3 to 5 years. That's a long time. That's a long-term career for many millennials at a particular company. So providing them a very clear progression of either different activities or roles that they can have in a particular organization so that they can learn and continue to learn at a steady clip. But I would also say pulling out all those transition plans that maybe you had before COVID that you just have been too busy to actually look at because you've been so busy trying to get parts or get talent or whatever in the door. The back end drain of talent and time has really impacted that. So being able to look at career management plans, transition plans, what happens when somebody, as I like to say, hits the lotto or drives into a ditch or just decides they're done, right? Just as an example, so many supply planners are just done, and there's just this mass exodus out of that part of the professional white collar workforce right now because everybody's just so frustrated and they're just challenged and impacting their mental health, quite frankly. So they're going to go off and find other things to do. So really understanding how to keep your workforce motivated, who they are, what do they want to do. And frankly, it's okay if they just want to spend a couple of years with you. Find the right opportunity for them to learn and grow so that they could either decide they want to stay or be really great ambassadors for you if they decide to go work for a customer, right? We're, as you and I both know, most sincerely, it's a small world out there, right? So
Absolutely.
there's an old European expression, you always meet people at least twice in life. And so, building out, kind of taking that view of not being upset when somebody leaves, but, positioning them to be the best they can while they're with you so that they can go and then, be your advocate, be your ambassador, maybe even be a great customer for you in the future. I think that's advice well heeded.
Absolutely. I think that's a great advice, especially, when you talk about changing with the changing times, right? And when you look at the millennials and the new workforce that is in the industry, or getting into the work stream, you want to make sure that as a business owner, as a management team, you're able to uh, make your process as easy as possible for them to be part of that organization. And like you said, whatever time they spend with you, and if they leave you, they take your name as a name to be reckoned with, and that goes a long way. So that's a great advice. Thank you for sharing that. And so, being said that, from what you shared so far, what is one of the biggest lessons you learned along the way? Do you have something in particular that you like to share?
Well, I was asked to comment on this as part of the LinkedIn Advisors program a few years ago. Like, what would you tell you at 25? What would you tell you at 25? And I would give, particularly coming out of pandemic, I would say a few things. I'd say, be much more patient with yourself. So don't let the little things become big things, and take the time that you need to focus on the big things. I would also say that physical and mental health are very, very important. Take the time to eat, take the time to sleep, take the time to do the things that you need to do outside of work to stay balanced. Because if you don't, you're no good to anyone at work. I once had a team I was managing, and I literally had to say that you're taking a break between 12 and 12:45. I don't care if you eat. I prefer you do, but get out, walk around, do something. And if you work past 6, we're bringing food in because you're just no good to me. You're making mistakes after the dinner hour if you're not eating, just simple care things like that. I would probably also say, kind of looking back, I'd say, also be patient with other people. Particularly coming out of COVID, we don't know what other people have had to go through or what their backstories are. So I think, particularly in some cases, we get so much hyperbolic talk and, just voice coming out of media today. Take the time to step back and create kind of your own world of kindness if you can. Take the time to be good to yourself as well as to others, kind of like what our parents taught us when we were getting ready to go off to kindergarten, and try to kind of keep that in mind, particularly in those tough moments. Give everybody that extra 3 seconds to clarify and understand their world. You just have no idea what's going on in their world, right?
Absolutely, and I think that's a great advice and a great lessons learned from things that we take it for granted, right? As you said, especially taking care of yourself, and I think it starts with that. And once you have that in place, and then you look at others and be gentle. Be someone who can relate to you, or you can relate to their issues, and that goes a long way. So,
for sure, completely agree.
So I think with that, I think we come to our end for our first session. It has been a great conversation, Bill, and I would like to thank you for sharing your thoughts with our listeners. So thank you again,
and
we'll
look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Tech Driven Business, brought to you by Innovative Solution Partners. Bill touched on many key points that any business gets to think about as it applies to the changing workforce. His key takeaway: think about transition and progression plans for your business to ensure long-term success. We would love to hear from you. Continue the conversation by connecting with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Learn more about Innovative Solution Partners and schedule a free consultation by visiting isolutionpartners.com. Never miss a podcast by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Information is in the show notes.